Kelly, or at least we should be. That's what I believe. I've gotten better at this.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Just to be clear for anybody who's joined, you did not ghost me last week. We talked.
We did, yes.
And combination of challenges led us to decide to move it to this week. So welcome back, Kelly Sanchez, Head of Talent Acquisition at DigiCert. Of course, Scotty John, you're on my LinkedIn page. Thank you for joining us. We are live today talking about ghosting, and we're going to get into all the details here in just a second. But I think to start, per usual, I've got to go make sure that I am monitoring any comments and or questions that you have for us on this topic, or for that matter, any other recruiting related topics. So I'm going to let Kelly give us a brief definition of ghosting, at least as we're discussing it today. And then, I'm sure she'll nail it. But if I have any additional thoughts on it, I'll add them as soon as I come right back.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah. So we're excited to talk about ghosting. And the definition that I would say is simply no communication heard from someone. So you reach out to a friend, a family member, a coworker, let's hang out, let's do something, and nothing. You didn't get a call back. You didn't get any type of communication. So you got ghosted. Like, that's as easy as I can make it sound. It happens in the dating world. Ask someone out on a date, don't hear back, ghosted. Maybe interviewing, same thing. Hiring manager doesn't get back to you, skips it, the interview, you just got ghosted. So
that's it. I don't think I can add anything to that. To your point, I think this has happened throughout all time and eternity, right? But we just didn't necessarily have a term, or at least this term, for it. So it's relatively new term, at least as it's applied to this. But today we're going to talk about whether you're a candidate applying for a job or a hiring manager that has interviewed someone, how to avoid ghosting, why you shouldn't do it, etc. So we're just going to get into the details. Per usual, if you have any questions or comments for either of us as we go through, I'll be monitoring the comments section while also trying to pay attention. I am certainly guilty of not always listening as well as I should, because Kelly told me that she was going to be in Peru for a month, and you are there, Kelly, right? You're in Peru today. So thank you for joining us. I know you're working from there, but it's also a vacation. So thanks so much for being here, despite being in a tropical paradise, it sounds like.
Yes, the perks of virtual remote work in action.
Right, absolutely. All right, so let's start out with, and I think we should start from, if you're, as a company, right? If you're trying to avoid, right now, we know it's a super hot labor market. So if you're a company and you're trying to avoid your top candidates ghosting you, what are your recommendations? I guess maybe we should start with, like, what does that look like, generally speaking? And why do you think it happens, Kelly? And then we'll kind of talk a little bit about recommendations to maybe make it stop happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So your question is, why is ghosting a thing from like a company side of things?
Yeah. Why do candidates ghost?
Why do candidates ghost? Got it. So what comes to mind is application process. They are filling out the exact same thing on your application process, and they already have it on the resume. Interview process. More than 4+ interviews. That's a long process. So yeah. Candidates may ghost. Options. They have so many options out there now. So, they talk to you, maybe didn't like what they heard. Maybe the role was advertised differently. They don't, hey, I'm just going to ghost and go with the other 20 options that I have that is what I'm looking for, that matches my needs, everything that I'm looking at. Any others, Scotty, to add?
Yeah, I think the only other one is, in my opinion, this started with us, right? This started with recruiters, hiring managers with companies, ghosting candidates. And by that, we simply mean, again, it's like a candidate applies and never hears anything. Way worse is a candidate interviews and never hears anything, right? So I think that in some ways there's candidates kind of, again, job applicants or candidates. I'm kind of using those interchangeably. They're just like, hey, these guys do it to us, so I'm going to do it to them, right? There's maybe a slight bit of revenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Why wouldn't you?
I mean, fair, right? Fair. So that would probably be the only other thing I would add as to why it happens. In terms of, again, as a company in this tight labor market right now, what do you think we can do as recruiters and hiring managers and companies generally to avoid it happening to us?
Yeah. And we've talked about this before, Scotty, is communication. So for example, the interview process, setting up expectations up front of what that looks like, and communicating it. Don't just like, hey, we'll talk to you later or anything, and just leave it very vague. No one likes that. And to what you just said, we may have started the ghosting from the company side, and in reality, take it back, whoever started it. No one likes to be ghosted. So treat people like you would want to be treated. So, hey, respond back, communicate. If you did miss the interview or something happened, be considerate, acknowledge it. That would be the biggest thing that I would say that I've seen, is people just kind of like, hey, they didn't say anything, I didn't say anything, so it didn't happen. And we know you were late. I know I was late. Acknowledge it.
Yeah, that's great. And to your point, I think that, so setting expectations is a huge one, right? And I guess I should just pause here real quick. So for those of you watching, thank you again for joining us today. I've got Kelly Sanchez, my bi-weekly conversation partner. We didn't do this last week for a couple of different reasons. And here we are this week. We'll be here again next week as well. The topic of conversation for us today is ghosting. Why does it happen? What does it mean? We've kind of covered so far why candidates ghost in a hiring process. And we'll talk a little bit about why companies ghost candidates here in just a minute. Thank you so much for joining. And again, if you have questions or comments, please feel free to pop them into the comment section here on LinkedIn. All right. So back to what I was saying, Kelly, to your point, communication is key, setting expectations up front. There are plenty, in what I do specifically, right, as an IT recruiter, there are plenty of companies who don't outline what all will be expected. And I think oftentimes when it comes to a technical interviewee, just basically after their application and or an initial outreach from a recruiter, being sent a link for an assessment and not even knowing kind of what to expect from there, just a recipe for getting ghosted, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Here. And because you're not giving them any input, any information about what, I guess you're not giving them the why behind it. So I wouldn't want to just do a link without understanding what I'm getting into.
Totally. And so we got a great comment here talking about how people are afraid to disappoint others. And I think, that's jumping ahead a little bit on what we were going to talk about with regard to the company side of things. But it's absolutely the same, that happens for candidates as well. Like you said earlier, in this market with so many opportunities for a lot of different people, a lot of different, positions out there, you might really like the person that you talk to and just not want to let them down by saying, hey, you're not my top choice. I'm actually going to look at these other things. Right. So I think that's it's a very insightful comment. Absolutely the case. And again, The way I looked at that is maybe that's why it happens on the other side of this, from a company to a candidate, but absolutely it could go both ways, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Just the confrontation of delivering bad news too.
Right.
I think about.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, we've had several people join. So again, thank you so much for joining today. Kelly Sanchez and I, Kelly Sanchez, head of talent acquisition at DigiCert. We're discussing ghosting, what it is, why it happens, why you shouldn't do it. So let's get to that. With regard to, a candidate having either applied to a job or been recruited by somebody like you or I, why should you not ghost? I don't necessarily think this is self-evident or obvious, though in our business we might, but what do you think? What are the reasons why we shouldn't do it?
Yeah, you don't want to be that guy or that girl burning that bridge. First impressions definitely are memorable, so don't do it. But yeah, you know what I was just thinking about, Scotty? Sorry, this is going to take us off topic, but another thing is just why people are ghosting is offers. Like they receive multiple offers and then they ghost, the other offer. So
sure.
Yeah, wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody isn't following up with you, right? If someone's not asking you what your thought is, then why would you? In some cases, it's tempting not to like follow back up with them and let them know, right? You're like, they don't care. They have tons of applicants, whatever. It's not important. I do think that's relevant to why you shouldn't do this, because here's the thing.
Yeah.
Right now, in certain, again, specifically in some areas, right, in some job functions, there's a ton of opportunity. And it might feel like, especially if you haven't gone through like a cycle of this in the past, it might feel like it's the way it's going to be forever, but it's not. Things are cyclical. We've seen it happen now a couple of times. I've, worked with folks who've seen it happen several times. Things will change, and you don't, to your point, you don't want to burn bridges, even if you think there's a company that you would never want to work for. Like, I don't care about that company. Doesn't matter to me. I never want to work for them. Well, people move companies and often they don't forget, right? So whomever you're ghosting at the company that you don't want to work for, they might move to your dream company in the future. You apply it to that job and they're like, nope, not a chance. That person ghosted me, right? So that'd be another reason I just say, don't do it. Anyway.
Yeah.
Did we cover everything we need to with regards to candidates ghosting companies at this point?
I think so. Yeah.
Again, anybody who's watching right now, if you have questions as it relates to this topic, or for that matter, any other, questions about recruiting, you've got me, Scotty John, and Kelly Sanchez, head of talent acquisition at DigiCert. And we're happy to address any questions you have. So far, we've just gotten some great comments. So thank you for that. All right. So now moving on to the other side of this. It's, candidates ghost, but I would argue that this started with companies ghosting, right? So what are some reasons why companies, whether it's recruiters, HR, or even for that matter, hiring managers, why do they ghost, or why do we ghost, I should say, candidates?
I would say it's the easy way out. It's, you don't want to have a tough conversation. No one likes to decline people. It's not fun, but hey, the people that actually pick up the phone, call, and decline, how much more respect do you have for them and the company? Hey, they actually are taking the time to call me versus I'm just going to not say anything, not even provide an email. Right. And I'm just going to assume, hey, your no response is, yeah, they didn't like me. No.
Right. Yeah. So I'm going to share this, not to pump my own tires. I hope it doesn't come across this way, but just because I think to illustrate your point, indeed. As soon as I said that, everybody's like, oh, here he goes. But I declined a candidate. I had talked to him about a potential job opportunity. And it took me like 2.5 weeks to find out that they weren't interested in his background, not for any reason other than, they were looking for somebody who had like several more years of experience. Right. So it'd been 2.5 weeks. I think it would probably be pretty easy just to forget about it and move on. But I just called and I left him a voicemail. It was as simple as that. Just, hey, just wanted to close the loop on this, let you know that these guys ultimately made this decision. Here's why. And Kelly, he sends me. So first of all, I assume this guy's Gen Z, and I got to figure out how these guys communicate a little bit more or a little bit better, because he sent me like a voice message via text. I was like, that's awesome. But he was stoked. And he told me, he's like, any opportunities that you bring to me in the future, I will prioritize because you gave me this feedback, which just illustrates that this happens. That doesn't happen often, right? And ghosting happens. It's like become the norm. So you want to go above and beyond as a recruiter or a hiring manager. It doesn't take that much. Literally, I left this dude a voicemail telling him he was declined. And he's like, thank you. Right. So, I totally did pump my own tires.
Yeah. But it's a good story. It's a small thing. It's not like you did something crazy and wrote out this long, huge email describing it. It's like, hey, we declined you. Have any questions? Give me a call back. And he did. He sent you a voice text, not even just a text, a voice text.
There you go. There you go. So, to your point, and just to get back on topic, first and foremost, I should mention again, thank you everyone for joining. Today, Kelly Sanchez, head of talent acquisition at DigiCert from Peru, I might say, has joined me to discuss ghosting, what it is, why it happens, why you shouldn't do it, and how, some practical tips for how not to do it, which sounds maybe silly, but hopefully it's going to continue to make sense here. So we're talking now about candidates being ghosted by companies, and we're talking a little bit about why it happens. I think another reason, Kelly, that it happens is because, frankly speaking, as recruiters, especially when you're, an in-house or a corporate recruiter, right? Which, just to be clear, I work for a third party. So we partner with companies to try and help place people. You work directly for DigiCert. And in your position, oftentimes you guys are spread so thin and have so many positions that you're working on that you get so busy. And I think ghosting sometimes happens not because someone's afraid to share feedback or, have confrontation, but because they just feel like they're too busy to follow up.
Yeah.
I would say that probably happens more often with people who've applied to a job versus people who've interviewed. We'll get into that here in a second, but that's frankly, that's another reason. So if you're a candidate who thinks you're being ghosted, remember that following up with a recruiter or a hiring manager, that's not annoying. That's actually in many cases very helpful, right? You can speak to this better since you're on that side of the business.
Yeah, you're spot on, Scotty. Definitely apply, do the traditional, hey, follow up, find the recruiter or whoever that HR person is within that company, send them a LinkedIn message. Because out of the many people that apply, you're going to stand out just with that little task that you did, but it's going to pay off. That at least the recruiter is now going to look for you out of that big pile of applications that they're going to have to sift through. But yeah, absolutely, we're doing our best, especially right now with everything that is going on in the environment that we're in. It's definitely not on purpose. Maybe in the past it was.
Well, and one other reason too is, as a recruiter, and this is maybe in some ways trying to defend recruiters a little bit, but as a recruiter, we don't always get feedback from hiring managers. It might be several weeks and frankly, even some cases months. And this happens even when you're in the same organization, right? You're following up, and they might just be sitting on, I had these 10 interviews and I can't decide or whatever. And it's up to us to consult them and say dude, people are not going to stick around. You can't wait this long. Yeah. But oftentimes if it's been several weeks and you've interviewed and you think like, I'm being ghosted. This is so like, this is super rude, which of course it would be if that were the case.
Yeah.
We might not know yet. The hiring manager might, they're trying to do their job in addition to hiring, which of course is part of their job, but there's a lot on the plate of anybody who has to hire into their team. So that also may be a reason why you're not hearing back.
Yeah.
So Kelly, I think we kind of covered it already. And again, just anybody we've gotten again, some great comments. Anyone who has questions about this topic, please feel free to drop them into the comment section here on this LinkedIn post. We talked about what ghosting is. We've talked about kind of why it happens from the candidate side. We talked about why it happens a little bit from the company side. What are some things that, and again, we've addressed this a little bit, but what are some things we can do to, try and make sure it doesn't happen to us?
Yeah. And you just talked about it just briefly as the follow-up. Continue to connect with your recruiter, follow up. It's not a nuisance. Like, we want to know, and we're doing our best, but again, in this environment that we're in, we're just so busy. It's ridiculous. But at the same time, we get it. You guys are just as busy as well. So yeah, just any follow-up communication, letting us know where you're at too in the process, especially if we're a company that you're really interested in.
Yep.
And yeah, I would say share that. Don't play the hard to get, hey, I have all these options. Like, it's the time to be transparent, set up, because you're doing with your compensation anyways. You're telling us where you want to be at. And
right.
Hey, if we can make it work, we're going to make it work. But if we can't, then I'm going to not waste your time and say, hey, like, as much as I think you're awesome and amazing, I would love to have you, but yes, we have a budget. And unfortunately, we're not even in the same playing field. So best of luck. I'll connect you with someone in my network. I actually had that conversation last week. I was super bummed. He was amazing, but just the timing wasn't going to work out. But I was real with him and I was like, hey, go whatever you need. I will connect you. So yeah.
I agree. I think following up consistently, it's again, it's no fun to get ghosted, and it feels like you might be annoying someone if you're following up on a weekly basis, particularly if you have interviewed, right? Following up with the recruiter that you were working with, following up with the hiring manager if you have their contact information. I mean, I just think that like there's zero excuse for this, and they owe you. If you've interviewed somewhere, you are owed something. Even if it's simply, hey, we decided to go with other candidates. As long as you're polite, and I would refer to it as politely persistent, then, you won't burn bridges, and it's a company, again, or maybe even a person you aren't going to want to work with if they continue to ignore that outreach and never respond. But I think that you can escalate it up, even to executives in the firm, just saying, hey, I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus here. I know you guys are all busy. Just want to make you aware, I'm very interested in this role. And if the answer is I'm not a fit, or you want with someone else, that's totally acceptable. I just, before I kind of cross it off the list, I'd like to know. That'd be kind of, I guess, the parting, advice I'd have for anybody who has had this happen or feels like it's happening to them currently. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, this was a short one today. Thank you again, everyone, for joining Kelly and I to chat about, I guess you just watched this chat about, but thanks for all the comments. And if there are any questions, per usual, please feel free to send them directly to either of us, via direct message or I'll continue to monitor this post, so you can drop them in the comment section and I'll address them as they come in. Otherwise, any last words, Kelly?
No, just enjoy the snow out there. Actually, I'll be enjoying the sunshine.
Yeah. To your point. And I don't know if everybody that's watching us live here knows or I should say is in Utah. In fact, I know at least one right now is in Michigan. But we're finally getting some snow. It feels like winter again. I am absolutely stoked about that. I've been skiing pre-work the last couple of days, and it feels awesome. Kelly is enjoying the beach in Peru, and she's. I know Kelly well enough to be able to speak for
with
her.
this beach hair.
She is stoked to be missing the snow in Utah right now. So yeah, Kelly, thanks again. Appreciate you joining from Peru. That's awesome. And yeah, we'll see you next week, right? We skipped last week, so we'll be back on our regular biweekly cadence starting next week. Thanks again, everyone, for joining.
Bye.